Hello, I'm April Fernando from the Center for Innovation and Population Health at the University of Kentucky. Welcome to today's eQIP live event. If this is your first time joining us, we're so glad you're here. eQIP is a partnership of qualified individuals from around the country. It's a forum where QIs can learn from each other and grow professionally. There are many ways to interact with the partnership, including live events like this one, recorded videos and tutorials, blog posts, discussion boards and chat groups, tip sheets, connecting with other QIs, and more. See the description below and visit us at eqipartnership.org. You will hear more about eQIP throughout this presentation. Let's turn to the topic for today. Have you ever wondered what information judges really want when they're making placement decisions? Does it matter to judges whether we as helping professionals work together or not? What about whether we are listening to parents or youth when we're doing assessments? To answer these important questions, we need some experts to drive our conversation. Let me introduce you to our guests for today. The first guest is the Honorable Judge David Guyton, who was elected to the Family Court Bench in South Carolina in 2010. Prior to that, he served as an associate city judge for the city of Rock Hill for 10 years. Judge Guyton is a member of the York County Bar, the South Carolina Bar, the American Bar Association, the Judge Advocate General's Corps, and practices in the U.S. District Court for the District of South Carolina. He served on the Commission on Lawyer Conduct for over 10 years and currently serves on the Commission on Judicial Conduct. He served as a private guardian ad litem in custody cases and as a volunteer guardian ad litem in the Department of Social Services Neglect and Abuse cases. He also has volunteered many hours to pro bono and military assistance to military personnel programs of the South Carolina Bar. Judge Guyton is a past president of the York County Bar Association and the Kiwanis Club of Rock Hill. He has served as a judge advocate for VFW Post 2889 and the Marine Corps League Old English Leathernecks Detachment and is a lifetime member of both organizations. Our second guest is Kendra McCray, an associate policy analyst at the Center for Innovation and Population Health at the University of Kentucky. Kendra, as she would like us to refer to her today, provides training and educational support to professionals on the Child and Adolescent Needs and Strengths, or the CANS, and other transformational collaborative outcomes management tools. Prior to joining the IF Center, Kendra was with the South Carolina Department of Social Services, where she was a facilitator on the implementation of the Family Advocacy and Support Tool, or the FAST. She has over 15 years of experience with child welfare systems and began her career working with foster youth in residential settings. Within South Carolina Department of Social Services, she's held positions of foster care case manager, supervisor, and program coordinator, and worked closely with the South Carolina Family Court system, where she used her experience to support the reunification of families. Kendra believes that the well-being, safety, and permanency of all families, caregivers, and children is critical, and she is dedicated to ensuring that jurisdictions across the globe are equipped with the tools to ensure that happens. Today, we will join Kendra as she takes us into the courtroom and shares her candid conversation with the Honorable Judge David Guyton. I hope that their discussion helps us better understand how the assessments we do and the information we provide from those assessments can support better placement decisions.
When I first learned of eQIP and considered providing resources to help QIs, I thought about the importance of our work intersecting with our judicial system. As you know, all QRTP placements must be approved by a judge within 30 days. To help support appropriate placements, we need to ensure our judicial system have the information they need. So who better to speak with than a family court judge? The first person that came to mind was Judge Guyton. I've worked with many judges in my career, but Judge Guyton is the fairest and most knowledgeable by far. He has a heart and a passion for helping the families that enter his courtroom. He prides himself on the ability to make the best decisions and takes into consideration all the perspectives of a family's team. As I spoke with Judge Guyton, we were able to discuss the importance of keeping families together, identify the information that's important to him when making placement recommendations, and explore the benefits that effective assessments bring to the decision-making process. Please note as you listen that the thoughts and opinions are those of the Honorable Judge David Guyton and do not reflect the opinion of the South Carolina Judicial Branch. I hope you enjoy this conversation as much as I did. What information is helpful for you when possibly making placement decisions?
The more information, the better. The majority of the work in that regard has to be in gaining that information and crunching it down to something that a judge can use typically in a short period of time, just because our systems, and I'm sure it's not just in South Carolina, but get overloaded. I know there's a problem with being able to keep employees in so many different areas these days. And then sometimes there's a turnover of different caseworkers and all. So getting the information in a spot that can be used by whoever needs to pull it up that particular occasion and get it to the judge in a way that we can look at it quickly, ascertain what those strengths and weaknesses are, and maybe find the best option for building on the strengths and then finding support for those particular needs. I mean, it's something as simple. Transportation might be a huge issue for a family. And so you've got to know that before figuring out how do you resolve that issue. And then, of course, the individual counseling, family counseling. But we use those terms a lot in very generic, broad areas. We also need to maybe know, well, what particular area of individual counseling will benefit this kid the most, and what area of family counseling will help them as a family unit, so that the next time something's starting to happen, maybe it's de-escalation, anger management, whatever it might be. Finances is always a huge matter, so we need to know that to maybe help with matching them up with some financial resources somewhere. Housing's such a huge issue these days. It's so expensive. So getting that information boiled down into something a judge can look at quickly is beneficial from a judge's standpoint. I think it's very helpful to have a detailed background about the child and the family. And for instance, with our Department of Juvenile Justice evaluations, those are usually 10 to 12 pages long. They're single space, but they have the IQ scores, they have academic performance, they'll have records on school attendance, school conduct. They will provide history as to the family's makeup or breakup, kind of a thing, as to the father, mother, are they still together, what's going on there. They also will provide just about as much background information as you can think about. And I will take those because they do take a long time to absorb. If I get them the day of court, then it would take us 3 times as long to have any given hearing. So I get those the day beforehand, take them home at night and read through those and highlight them. And they do have a summarized section at the end, which provides a good summary of that particular situation. Then in court the next day, when that kid comes to court and his case is called, I can pull that out and look at it. And the solicitor has it, the defense counsel has it, Department of Juvenile Justice has it. We all know what's going on with that kid and all those particular details. And so that makes it a lot easier for me to know what's going to hopefully work best for that child and that family.
For DSS, what do you believe is important for them to consider when making placement recommendations?
Usually, I as a judge, for placement purposes, have DSS for family situations, with abuse and neglect. And then with DJJ, I get the evaluations, and that primary purpose is to decide what resources are out there to match up with a child to try to help that child overcome these bad decisions that have been made. And the evaluations that I get with the Department of Juvenile Justice are very good. They're detailed, and they really give me a background to know what's happened in a child's life, some of the traumas that have occurred. And that will assist me. With the Department of Social Services, I often don't get a lot of background information on a kid or a family until I'm in court that day and I'm reading through usually a guardian ad litem's report. I like to pull those out or get those early on in a hearing, so because the guardian's not for the DSS, and the guardian is not for the parents. The guardian's for the child. And I've told the guardians anytime that I'm speaking to them, you tell me what you think is best for this child and help me to know what options are out there. And so, we as judges want to know what options are available, but we're looking at, what kind of abuse it may have been, or for the kids in DJJ, what they did, why they did it. And the more information that we can get, the better decision that we can make. And options is what we want. So we want, as judges, we may have 15, 20 cases on the docket that we're trying to go through. So we're getting a lot of information quickly that we need to digest. And sometimes I think it's too fast that we have to go and try to make those decisions. So it's nice to have it summarized somewhere and to have those options laid out so that we can make that decision.
Have you ever been in a position where you had to override a placement decision, right, that someone may have made previously? Can you tell us about that? Have you that ever happened, and what happened?
It doesn't happen too often, but I think I've done that on a few occasions, mainly as a result of you get into the courtroom and something gets conveyed to you that you didn't know before and that probably everybody else didn't know. And I would say more often than not, from a DSS standpoint, it is when the guardian ad litem provides a report, and unfortunately DSS and defense attorneys don't always coordinate in advance. But even when they do, and they think they may have an agreement on something, if they have not talked to the guardian ad litem, and the guardian ad litem provides a report that says, this is not in the best interest of the child. If you send this child to this location, I am afraid that this child is going to get hurt or is getting the wrong kind of counseling or something of that nature. And I may say, you may have an agreement, but I don't think this is in the best interest of the child. We got to find another option. So it doesn't happen that often, but from time to time it will. Like I said, I think we've gotten better. I still have to fuss at attorneys sometimes to not forget the guardian ad litem and make sure you talk to the guardian ahead of time, communicate with each other prior to coming into court. That's just, it seems so common sense, but sometimes people get at odds about things. And, I have to tell them it's not a football game. Yeah. This side doesn't win and this side doesn't lose. I said, we either all win or we all lose, and we're looking at the child.
I'd like to welcome Kendra to our conversation today. Thanks so much, Kendra, for your interview with the Honorable Judge Guyton and for being here today to talk with us about your conversation with him.
Thank you for having me.
I'm struck by his last comment, that it's not a football game when it comes to placement decisions. I was kind of surprised he said that. What do you think of this comment?
Well, actually, when we did the interview, I told him I was going to steal that comment, but since we played it here today, I cannot steal it, so I won't use it. However, yes, I was struck by that comment as well. A lot of times when you have been doing this work for many years, right, we sometimes get stuck in our ways and not really flexible. So it could be like a us versus them with our families that we serve, right? And so I can see that football team theme, right? Of, either we're going to win over here or we're going to win, but we're not really focusing on the main picture, which is we're on the same team, right?
Mhm.
We're all moving towards the same goal. Even inside the courtroom, I've spent a lot of time in court, and the way it's even set up, right? You have the defense, and then you have the plaintiffs over here, right? You're in separate sides of the courtroom, and then the gallery behind you, right? It's all kind of separated.
Mhm.
Unfortunately, sometimes we take it outside the courtroom too,
Mm.
and it's a us versus them. So really focusing in on, you know what? We're on the same team. We have the same goals. We're all wanting to reach that goal, which is the best interest of that youth, right? Their well-being. So I really enjoyed that conversation, but that quote was really meaningful and impactful. It makes you think about the work that you do.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thanks for that reflection. Judge Guyton identified the important information for him to know about youth prior to making placement decisions. Let's translate that to the assessment that the qualified individual conducts. So from your own experience working with Judge Guyton and what you know of the QI role, what stands out to you as important for QIs to keep in mind?
Yeah, that's a great question, April. And for those that I've trained, they know that I am a list person. I do tips and key tips. So I just want to break it down, I guess, in some key tips if you're okay with that.
Sure.
The first thing that I really think about is making sure that we are using a strength-based tool, right? There are a lot of tools out there to assess, but making sure the tool that we're using to assess families are strength-based, right? It's going to tell us the entire picture, the family's entire story, right? In a strength-based way. So definitely using a strength-based assessment tool. Another important piece, I believe, is making sure the information is relevant to that youth right now, right? Talking about their story as of today, not their story 2 years ago, right? Yeah, history is great, but how does this youth look today, right? Telling us their needs that are relevant to them. And in those relevant needs, making sure that it's detailed information that we're getting from those relevant needs, right? Is important. I can give an example if that's okay.
Sure.
I told you earlier what I like lists. So it's really easy to paint a picture like this for a youth, right? We have a youth A, reckless behavior, runaway, danger to others, and let's say anger control, right? And that's this youth. That tells you nothing, nothing at all. You can't do anything with that, right, April? So, but if I told you that, this youth does really well most days, most of the time, but every night he runs away from his placement and is found in the middle of the road, busy intersection, cars coming by, and staff finds them, they go to him, and he becomes irate and aggressive. So they have to contact law enforcement every night to get him back into his placement, right? And get him calmed down. That tells you the exact, those items that I mentioned earlier, you can see all of those items, right? Maybe even some more, right? But now you understand him. You understand his picture, what he needs, not just the list. So making sure that the items that we are listing are relevant, but they're detailed so we know his story, right? And then the very last one, I think probably I should have said this first, but collaboration. We have to collaborate with our families. It's really important to make sure that we're all on the same page and that they are a part of every step of this. They are part of the assessment. They are a part of the conversations after the assessments, making those placement recommendations. You can do that during a child and family team meeting. You can do that during, I believe South Carolina has placement team meetings, right? You can do that. You can have these meaningful conversations where you're collaborating with the family. So if I can summarize it, I think those are my points. Strength-based assessment tools, making sure that the items are relevant, right? Telling this story as of right now, detailed information, and collaboration.
Thanks, Kendra. I think that's going to be really helpful for the QIs. Let's take a pause and a quick break to hear a little bit about eQIP, and we'll be right back.
Hi, I'm Brandon.
And hi, I'm Kendra.
And we're really excited to be establishing the eQIP partnership.
We really see it as a community, a gathering place where helping professionals who serve as qualified individuals can come together, share, to learn, to grow.
We're really thinking about how critically important the role of the QI is for effectively applying Family First legislation. QIs are independent gatekeepers helping to reduce conflict of interest and ensuring that children and families are having their needs addressed in appropriate ways.
It's such an important role.
Absolutely. The independence of the QI is critical, but it can also feel isolating.
And that can be challenging for QIs who are committed to continual growth and improvement in their work. We all best serve children and families by enhancing our own skills and knowledge. We know a lot of QIs may not have ways to do this within their own professional structures.
So enter eQIP. We want this partnership to be a space where QIs can gather, to share, to learn together, to grow together. We at the IT Center, we're generating content such as YouTube events, pre-recorded videos, and much more.
But the intent is that you, as eQIP partners, will contribute as well. Start and respond to threads in our discussion boards, share pages, documents, and media content in the links and download areas. If we all share what we know, then we will all grow together.
It all starts with equippartnership.org. There you can sign up to become an eQIP partner.
We'll look at your request and you'll get an email inviting you to join our Basecamp.
Basecamp is a virtual collaborative workspace that's perfect for eQIP. We'll use it for all of the things that we just discussed, discussion threads, as well as archiving links and downloads. It also has a schedule area so that we can keep an eye on upcoming eQIP events.
We really tried to have snacks, but sadly, we haven't been able to figure that part out just quite yet.
We hope that you'll join us. Kendra and I both will be regular contributors within the eQIP partnership, and we're really excited to get started.
We hope to see you soon. Join and learn more at eqypartnership.org. The link is also available in the description of this video.
Thank you for the work that you do on behalf of children and families.
All right, welcome back. We're talking today with Kendra McCray, an IF Center Associate Policy Analyst, about her recent conversation on assessments and placement decisions with the Honorable Judge Guyton of Rock Hill, South Carolina. Must be weird to see yourself in a video, huh, Kendra?
I did.
I appreciate you being here. We're going to watch another section of your interview, and I believe Judge Guyton talks about what works. So, is there anything we should pay particular attention to as we listen to this next section?
Oh, yeah. Well, this next section is great. You want to really listen to some of those pointers that he gives to assessors, right? That those that are doing those assessments, he gives some tips. He talks about how important it is to keep families together, right, from the start. And just really meaningful conversation. So listen out to those key tips that he gives for assessment QIs out there.
All right.
Now, one thing that we have here in York County that we started 3 or 4 years ago that I think is very helpful is DJJ and DSS have to have county liaisons with each other, so that when we get these kids that come into DSS protection and they're already maybe in the DJJ system or vice versa, whoever gets it first needs to let the other know. And I believe they have a digital way that they can pass information confidentially to each department and share that, and that gives us more information for options on the children. And we call those kids dual status kids, DJJ and DSS. And the importance to me of that is that sometimes social services has resources that DJJ does not have, and sometimes juvenile justice has resources that DSS has not had. And I do feel like in the past that the history used to be, and still is in some places around the state, I think that there's a battle that goes on between the agencies, because it's got to do with money and who's getting money from what pot, how many resources are there. And so that's understandable. But I believe that we've done well here in York County with them sharing this information with each other and saying, you know, we don't have a home for this child within the resources of this agency, but the others says, you know what, I think we've got something that might be a good fit for this kid. And when they do that and present it to the judge with a coordinated staffing, then usually I think we can get a better outcome for kids that way. And it includes families. It's got to, so that they get input. If it's a juvenile kid, it still gets the input from the families on what's the best thing to do. And they may or may not agree, and I have to be the one to make that decision. But it's nice to know all the options.
What are your views or thoughts on our ability to keep family together, not remove children?
I think that should always be the first goal if possible. And as you know, and we had in our courtroom many times, that I think the Department of Social Services, for instance, will do everything it can to prevent having to remove a child from bad situations. And if the department has to, is to be able to put a child with another family member. And I think that is always the best first option, if at all possible. children, even from, and as we both know, from abusive situations, still want to be with a parent if they can. And it can become quite traumatic to them to be removed, especially if it's in a situation that, again, because it's an emergency, involves law enforcement, or they're in the middle of domestic violence, other things, drug bust. And if they can be placed with someone they know, it's certainly less traumatic on them. And then I think in the long run, it is easier to keep a family together if we can keep them together to start with. If we have to place a child in foster care or a group home or something, the more time that passes, the less likely it seems that they're going to get reunited. I think the sad thing these days is a couple of areas is with substance abuse is so bad, or the substances themselves like fentanyl is so serious that it's the addictions are so bad that it's awful hard for parents to overcome those addictions in a relatively short period of time. So when we often say you've got 6-month treatment plan to do this or to do that, for many of these substances, it's just very hard for them to overcome that. And the other big area that I just see so much of right now is mental health. We're just in a crisis right now, as to adults and children. And I think especially for children, it was exacerbated through all of the COVID measures that were taking place, much of the at-home schooling. If some of these kids were at home during the COVID crisis and things were going on, then DSS was not there to be able to monitor, or they didn't know because school teachers who normally see it would be calling DSS, and they were not around to know if something was wrong. And so I think that lengthy period of time just exacerbated things. But it should always be our first choice to try to offer services and keep families together. They're just much more likely to succeed if we can do that early on.
So for someone that is interviewing, assessing youth so that they can make placement recommendations for them, what advice would you give them? What advice would you give someone who is assessing someone to gather the information to make placement recommendations?
I think that you need to have someone who can form a relationship with the child and be able to kind of dig deep to find out what's going on, what the background is, and what the desires of the child may be as well. Who can also be familiar enough with the system to answer their questions, make them more comfortable so that a child can have a degree of trust, because we sometimes might forget that from a kid's perspective, whether it's DSS or DJJ, is they're being brought into all of this and they don't understand what's going on. And we as adults are using words that they've never heard before. They don't understand. Families are sometimes coming into court. They hear acronyms about what kind of services are available. And, I've been in hearings where I'll say, and I'll sign an order to that effect, and that'll be the end of the hearing. And I can see in my courtroom a parent turn around and look at their attorney and basically say, well, what does that mean? What am I going to have to do? Or, if this is such and such counseling, where does that counseling take place? What is that going to look like? And kids really need to buy in, and to buy in, I think they just have to have trust in the system and know a little bit more about what the adults are talking about, and feel confident that their input is going to be heard as well. And we need to let them know that we're not going to always be able to do what they want because we have to make a decision that's in their best interest. And they don't have the age or experience to really understand that. And we have a bigger picture, but we've got to respect where they're at and try to get them to buy into it as well.
I found Judge Guyton's focus on the trust that youth has in the assessment process and with the assessor really interesting. And as a person who used to conduct psychological evaluations, I know this to be true. But, the point at which we're assessing kids is a very delicate moment, a difficult moment. And getting that trust can be really hard. But I wonder what thoughts you have about what Judge Guyton said and about trust that the youth should have.
Oh, thank you. That's a great question, April, and very important, right? That in the work that we do, remembering and understanding that we do need the trust of the youth, right? Whenever I was thinking about that statement that he made, what came to mind is this. What if you got a phone call today, right? And someone that you may have met, and they told you that you need to go to this address at this time, and that's all they gave you. That's all the information they shared. You would be kind of hesitant, right? I don't know why I'm going there. I don't know who's going to be there. What are we doing? We do this to our youth all the time, right? And we don't even really think about it, right? Like, oh no, we don't tell them anything. They're not a part of the process. So how would they trust you? How would they trust me, right? So we have to understand and trust the families and the youth, or understand that they don't trust us because we don't provide an atmosphere for them to gain that trust. So we have to work past that. And by doing that, we have to allow them to be a part of the process every step of the way. Have transparent conversations. Sometimes that's really hard, right? But you have to do that, right? Making sure that they know what's happening right now and what the next steps are going to be, right? That's important. So I feel like that is a very important statement. I was really not really shocked that Judge Guyton said that, because that's him, right? That's why we chose him as being the judge to have on our show. But really just to know and understand that it's going to take some time to build and gain trust from our youth, but it's important, and you have to have it so that you can get that buy-in that he talked about, right? Making sure that they know where we're going next. They have all the information that they need, and we can make goals together. Give them an opportunity to agree, but also to disagree with whatever recommendations that is being made. And most professionals, I know for myself, I would like, no youth can disagree with me, right? No, they can disagree, right? And that's okay. Let's now have a meaningful, transparent conversation about why, and let's get there together. So I think that's important.
Thanks, Kendra. Those are really important thoughts. I appreciate you sharing them. Let's go to some comments and questions from our audience, if we have any. I'm going to rely on my team to let me know if we have any comments or questions from the audience. And while they do that, I can ask you another question, Kendra. So Judge Guyton mentioned that in South Carolina, the solicitor, the defense attorney, the Department of Juvenile Justice, probably the Department of Social Services, all have access to the same information and typically work collaboratively together. In your experience working in the family court system, is this teaming approach common?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. All that we do is teaming and engaging. I believe that in the state of South Carolina, I don't know for other states and jurisdictions, we actually have a teaming that happens inside the courthouse. Not in the courtroom, but in the courthouse. And you're with attorneys, but you're having a conversation about the family and what needs to happen next. So it is very important to South Carolina to have that teaming and engagement, and you see it quite often. Having child and family team meetings is very important and happens all the time. You want to make sure that families are included every step of the way.
Mhm.
But sometimes we don't always still have agreements because, that's just life. You're not going to have everyone on the same page at all times and always agreeing. But having that teaming approach is very common for the state of South Carolina. And I'm very excited to have been a part of that.
Cool. Okay. I don't see that we have any comments from the audience. I want to invite them to make comments or ask a question. Let me ask you one more question. Judge Guyton discussed one of the challenges he faced is overriding a recommendation or decision. He said that a few minutes ago, and that this may happen because new information is conveyed in court that most parties were previously unaware of. So, what other challenges that you're aware of have witnessed during placement decision making in the courtroom? What have you seen as sort of is challenging for placement decisions?
Well, I've definitely seen not having all of the information at the time. But most of the challenges that I see in making placement recommendations is that we don't have the resources available that we need. I see that as a major challenge. And so you can make a recommendation, but then if the placement's not available, what do you do at that point, right? So I think that's really one of those big things where, as a system, making sure that we have the least restrictive placement that is the most appropriate placements available for our youth. So that was the biggest thing that I've seen in the courtroom, outside of us really not having all the information when we need it. And then we walk into the courtroom and then something else. He mentioned the guardian ad litem, right? And sometimes the guardian ad litem can bring in something that's like, I had no idea that was going on. So it kind of changes everything. But one key point that I want to point out, if that does happen, is this: make sure that you just reconvene, have another conversation, work with the families to get over that. And even though we don't have what we need right now, let's go back together. Let's go back to the drawing board to make sure that we can then make the best recommendation as possible for the child.
Excellent. We do have a question from the audience. Does caseload affect social workers' ability to make informed placement recommendations? And if so, what can be done to fix this? I don't know that you can answer this, Kendra, but from having worked in the system and having seen your colleagues with heavy caseloads, what do you think?
So having heavy caseloads definitely affects our ability to truly assess and thoroughly assess families, right? When you have so many different cases and your mind is being, taken from this youth and what they need to now this youth and their need, is very difficult to really focus in. So my suggestion, what I did all these years, is take it one day at a time, one youth at a time, right? So I'm not saying you only focus on one youth every day. That is not what I'm saying. So if you take that back and say, well, I heard on this YouTube live that Kendra said I only have to work with one youth at a time, I didn't say that, right? What I'm saying is take it one youth at a time, right? And just really making sure that the youth that's before you, you're giving them your attention and your focus to assess them, to really meet their needs, and working through that, what you need as the best placement. We can go through that and work through that together. I have an example. I know we're probably really close with time, but I used the cans when I was in South Carolina with a young lady, and I realized we didn't have what she needed in the state of South Carolina because the cans told me we didn't. And I was able to use that to show my system, my organization, that we needed something more than what we had. And I was able to use that information to get it. So that youth was able to get the placement that she needed based on the information was able to gather using the CAN. So I just want to throw that out there. We can do it. It's just going to take some work.
Awesome. Well, Kendra, do you have any last thoughts?
Well, April, it's just been a delight, a pleasure. I don't know if you can see the excitement on my face. I'm just really thrilled to be here today. I'm really sharing the interview that I had with Judge Guyton. We had a great time. Just really talking outside of, being in court all those years. We were able to just have a conversation that was really meaningful. And so I just, again, so thankful to be here, thankful to have this opportunity. And if you don't mind, I just want to say to your RQIs out there and anyone in a helping field, just thank you for the work that you do. Thank you so much for all the blood, sweat, and tears. I've been there, so I know what it is that you go through every single day. So just know, in a sometimes very thankless job, I thank you for what you do, and I appreciate it. Thank you, April.
You're welcome. And I think Judge Guyton has a closing statement for us, yeah?
He does. So
Okay.
I want to make sure that y'all share, and I was so excited that I forgot the last closing statement, but he did want to give something to our QIs and to our helping professionals everywhere. A last closing statement where he just really wanted you to know that he understands what you do. He knows how hard you work, and he appreciates what you do. So if you can share that, April, I appreciate that.
Awesome.
Well, I would just say for everybody who's out there when it comes to taking care of kids and trying to, work through, whether it's juvenile justice, Department of Social Services, that the entire process is difficult, that I know that you're not appreciated the way that you should be. I hope you understand from a judicial standpoint that we as judges do appreciate what you are doing, even if you don't hear it enough, or if we rule in a way that you don't recommend. It doesn't mean that we don't like you or you didn't do your job. It just means we had to make the tough decision. But if you give us the information we need, if everybody plays the role that they should be playing and gets the information together, then I am much more likely going to be able to make a better decision on behalf of that child, one that will be more effective early on, and hopefully try to keep this from escalating and turning into something that's long term. So I want to say thank you. I want to say collaborate with each other, communicate and collaborate. The more information each of you have and communicate with each other, then the better decision that everybody can make. And I think, at least here in York County, South Carolina, we're very fortunate to have people who do that most of the time. And then if you staff these cases with everybody who needs to be involved, so do that. And again, know that judges appreciate what you do, even if you don't get thanked enough.
That's all the time we have for today. A great big thank you to Kendra for introducing us to the Honorable Judge David Guyton and for sharing your reflections on your conversation with him. A special thank you to Judge Guyton for taking the time out from your busy schedule to meet with Kendra, share your experience, and provide some advice. And thanks to all of you for joining us. The eQIP partnership is organized by the Center for Innovation and Population Health at the University of Kentucky and seeks to create a collaborative platform for assisting QIs seeking support and professional development. eQIP provides QIs with opportunities to convene, share, and learn from each other. Don't forget to sign up at eqipartnership.org and join our Basecamp project to learn about networking, additional live events, tutorials, and more. I'm April Fernando from the University of Kentucky's Center for Innovation and Population Health. From all of us at the IF Center, thank you for all you do on behalf of children and families. We look forward to hearing from you soon.